This hour now, we're going to have our Health Friday conversation. On this 16th day of February, we have to talk about mental health and focusing on men and the boy child. We're joined by Arthur Muturi. He's a psychologist with the Chiromo Hospital Group. Good morning, Arthur.
Good morning to you, sir.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
How does that make you feel sitting on that seat?
Special, I'll say. Thank you for honoring the boy child.
Very good. We will tell you about the Pan-African Bank that says a better way, a better Africa.
The Pan-African Bank that is in 35 different African markets, as well as 4 other markets around the world. Look, imagine a situation, and that's what the thing is, that you can imagine a situation whereby you wouldn't have to open and close accounts depending on which country you went to, but that you would just be on the platform and it didn't matter where you went, that you could just continue as if you were in Nairobi or if you were in Kampala and then moved somewhere else. And so EcoBank has provided a platform upon which you can operate seamlessly just because you're on the platform. And they've said, look, it's a better way to do business. And indeed, it is a better way. And because it's a better way, it's a better Africa.
Very good. Indeed it is.
Wow.
Let's welcome you with today's proverb as well. And this week, the proverbs are from Angola. Listen to the proverb, give us your interpretation of it. In the larger affairs, the minor are forgotten.
Come up again.
In the larger affairs, the minor are forgotten.
In the larger affairs, the minors are forgotten.
The minor.
The minor are affected. Are forgotten. Oh, well. That we tend to, forget the most important, probably. And probably focus on the bigger things, or the bigger picture. And in the long run, forget the small things that matters.
Makes sense. It makes sense. We are concentrating so much on the bigger picture. We forget that the bigger picture is actually a composite of smaller images
details.
and smaller details.
Someone said you cannot have 100 bob without the coins. So take care of the coins and the notes will take care of themselves.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. What's the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Well, they are all in the same field of mental health. But basically, a psychiatrist is someone who has, gone to school to study medicine. And after that, they decided that they want to venture in mental health. And therefore, they focused on mental health, or they pursued their, masters in, psychiatry. Or a psychologist is someone who specifically go to school to study, a degree in mental health, and specifically after graduating, they now practice what we call psychotherapy. They give you therapy, or they carry out what we call counseling. So basically, the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is that there is one who has the power to prescribe, and the other one doesn't have the power to prescribe.
Okay.
And that is a psychologist.
But both deal with all spectrum of mental diseases.
Exactly.
All of them.
All of them.
I see. And you said,
Yeah, it's interesting. Because then a psychiatrist then essentially would be able to prescribe medication or any other kind of, like you said, therapy that you need to go on. So oftentimes you think about it as you go in and you have a conversation with a psychologist.
Exactly.
But you would then go in and get treatment from a psychiatrist.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So what are some of the mental health issues that we're dealing with right now, for which people are coming in, or for which we hope more people would come in for?
We have 2 common, or the majorly known or common mental health disorders across the world, and that is depression and anxiety. The third one will come in is substance use disorders. But then mostly people come in the hospital because probably they are affected in terms of depression, or maybe they have anxiety, or probably I started by having, maybe I have anxiety or I have depression, and therefore I've started coping negatively by the use of alcohol or other drugs, and therefore I get into addiction. So majorly we have 3, like depression, anxiety, and addiction. That is alcohol and substance use disorders.
Okay. What characterizes depression?
Depression is a mood disorder characterized by low moods, persistent low moods for at least 2 weeks. And then again, we have, loss of interest in the previously enjoyed activities. Then we'll have areas or elements whereby someone will be, feeling like they are exhausted, emotionally exhausted, and therefore they self-isolate. So this particular person can wake up one day and they feel very tired, very exhausted, but they don't even know why they are exhausted. And again, they might, start presenting with what we call psychosomatic symptoms, whereby you go to the hospital and you have a headache, but then again, when, you're taken to the lab or the lab samples are taken, there is nothing that can show that or can prove that you're medically sick. But you yourself, you're feeling that you're sick.
Okay.
So those are some of the symptoms that can tell us that, this person is having depression. Yeah.
Anxiety?
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, anxiety is characterized by excessive fear and worry, and more so irrational thoughts, whereby now you have each and every other human being is normal to have fear and worry, but then again it becomes a disorder when now it is excessive and now it is accompanied by irrational thoughts that prevents you from carrying your day-to-day activities normally. For example, there are people with anxiety anxiety is a spectrum with a number of areas here and there. So there are types of anxiety whereby people will fear heights. And they will say that I will not be able to come to work because I work on 5th floor, and that is preventing them from carrying their day-to-day activities. So someone else will look at it and say that, how are you fearing? Are you in fear of heights? But this person now is also carrying what we call the irrational thoughts. Probably they feel like, okay, if at all I take the 3rd floor, I'm gonna fall. Yeah.
So they will not enter a lift.
They will not enter a lift.
Okay.
But how do you then know that this one has become irrational? Because it's a fear. People have a phobia for heights, right? They'll not want to walk along an open balcony. They'll not want to stand on a cliff. They don't want to look down from a lift that has a glass window open. But when does it become irrational completely? You can say, okay, this one now is irrational. Because some of those things just sound like, well, I mean, I fear insects.
Yeah. Fear going outside.
I run and scream when I see a small. What are these things that people scream
Geckos.
about? Yeah, called the geckos. Someone screams because there's a gecko in the room.
Is that anxiety?
Is that, and when is it irrational?
Okay, thank you so much for that. Yeah? We're not sending people to get into the KWS territories and they start facing the lion in the name of
lions, okay.
in the name of I don't have any kind of fear or anxiety.
Or I'm not being irrational.
Or I'm not being irrational. Yeah. But then again, we are looking at we must be able to gauge. For example, if at all it's Eric, the office is maybe 3rd floor, and you used to take in the 3rd floor, and tomorrow you wake up with that particular fear of I don't want to go. I don't want to take the floor. I don't want to, use the lift. Why? You start saying that, okay, I'm going to fall. I'm going to, something going to happen. Probably the building is going to collapse. But then again, last week or last month, you're able to take that. So the question is, what is preventing you from, taking the lift or, going to the 3rd floor right now? So this is something that is triggered by something. And we must go back and ask ourselves, okay, has this person behaved this way over time, or is this particular kind of fear starting or beginning the other day? So if at all it's something that has been there, or probably this person is born like that, or we don't even have the justification why they are behaving like this, then we must be do some assessment to gather why they are like that at that moment.
Okay, let's go back to the two ones that we're talking about here, depression and anxiety, and we're having that conversation towards men today, towards boys, because boys eventually become men. What are the causes of depression? And what would you say are the causes? Because you talked about depression being characterized by at least 2 weeks of feeling low. You're in that depressed state with no clear reason as to why. What causes these that you've been able to establish?
Okay, there are a number of causes that bring about, the issue of depression. And I'll say that we all get affected by something called stress. Stress is inevitable. Stress is for each and every other person. But then again, when stress now moves from a point we call acute to a point where we call it chronic level, that you are, unable to deal with it. So if at all you're chronically stressed and you don't have the right coping mechanism to, end your stress, then it can, get to a point whereby now it's giving you a mental disorder. And this mental disorder mostly and at times is depression. That is number one. Number two, relationships. Number three, genetics. There are people who are predisposed to just, to depression just because of their genetical makeup. But we are saying that not everybody will be like that. But at times we are genetically predisposed. Number three, we'll find that, work, and especially nowadays, people are not able to balance or to probably, strike a balance between work and life. So you have a lot of, targets, you have a lot of, pressure from work, and you're not able to handle this particular kind of pressure. So you carry that pressure, or you take that pressure as stress, and it gives you probably depression. And then again, the people who use alcohol and other substances are more likely to have depression also.
In men, we see and we hear of very many cases of mental health issues among men. And then there are very many things that are happening in society that, we casually want to slap the issue of mental health on it. We are not sure, but now you'll be here to confirm. We see increased cases of gender-based violence. We attribute it to mental health. We see increased cases of suicide among men. We attribute it to mental health. We see increased cases of just violence as a whole, and we say mental health. Is it true?
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, there is an increased rate of, issues to do with conflicts in relationships, and most of the times we are attributing it to the issues of mental health. It is true that, yes, at times mental health can make people, it impairs the thinking and the judgment. And when you're dealing with a partner who is mentally sick or mentally ill, then it becomes very, very hard for you to have a very open and healthy conversation in a relationship. So most of the times when you'll, have conflict in between these, between the couples, and they are unable to resolve their matters positively. So I'll say yes to some extent, but then again, there are times when now there is no issues to do with mental illnesses. It is just an issue of maybe something like someone is, having what we call toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is not an issue of mental illness. It's an issue of, what you have picked, the attributes that you have, and you believe that a man should be like this in a relationship, or a lady should be like this in a relationship, and therefore you have to fight. Yeah.
Okay. How do we see these things manifesting themselves? Because oftentimes, and I think it's just really having to deal with a lot of details here, how do you make the connection and say that, because of the way this individual has been behaving, then it is definitely a mental health issue? Is it possible that somebody could have, a bad few weeks and that they could come out of it? At what point do you say, no, the way Eric has been behaving, definitely this is as opposed to, okay, well, he's just had a bad spot, he'll be fine?
Okay, I think you're attributing, or you want me to talk about the symptoms, or how do we know that this person is mentally ill?
Yeah.
So mental illnesses tend to affect three areas of three basic areas. Number one area is what we call the cognitive the cognitive area. And with the cognitive area, this affects our thoughts. And when the thought area is affected, this person will end up having impaired thinking patterns. And this impaired thinking pattern will be will have irrational thoughts in it. Will have something like poor judgment in it. Will also have things to do with negative thinking, very a pattern of negative thoughts that doesn't end. And therefore Eric used to have, to be very okay in terms of his own thinking, but then again we start noticing that, okay, this Eric is changing. Eric is having a lot of negative thoughts. Eric doesn't even have the hope for the future. That tells us that his cognitive area is getting affected. The second area is the behavioral area. And with the behavioral area, it's very good to know that it is actually the people who are around you who are going to notice that, oh, Eric is changing. The colleagues, your wife, your brothers, your sisters, the people who lives close to you are the one who are going to notice, oh, Eric is changing. Number one, Eric might start probably manifesting with issues to do with getting to work late, something that he never used to do. Eric might start manifesting with issues to do with outbursts, emotional outbursts. He used to talk freely in a very open manner, in a calm way, but now every other statement that he's making, he must, show some outburst here and there. Then irritability. Something happens to you and, you are easily irritable over something that, people are asking, hey, did it warrant this kind of a reaction?
Funny you jokes.
You get. And then there is a way that we have always, attached mental illness to, the issue of you becoming unkempt. But that is something that I want us to, challenge today. You can find someone who is walking in with a very nice suit, but they are mentally sick. So we no longer look at mental illnesses through how you're dressed or probably how you're kept. Okay, but then again we say that it can get to a point whereby you get disorganized. Even the issue of organizing your own home becomes an issue. Even the issue of waking up in the morning and taking a shower becomes an issue. That is the behavioral area. There are a number of areas, but then before I forget, the area of behavioral in terms of the behavior. Some people can get to isolate themselves. You don't want to, get out and associate with the people. You want to lock yourself in your house. You don't want even to pick calls. You don't want even to answer the messages. Because nowadays it's not all about the physical isolation. You're also looking at it through the modern way. You have your phone. You go home and you don't want to pick calls. You had an arrangement next week, but then again, when that day comes, you're the one who create issues here and there and say
to avoid.
Hey man, there is something that came up, and I will not be with you. You're isolating because you're becoming emotionally exhausted.
What's causing this? You said, life pressures, but life has always had pressure. Are we saying there's increased pressure in the modern day for the man? And what's leading to all these things?
Well, yes, pressure is one thing, and you see, with the economical changes, the economy, the way it is changing, it's becoming hard on each and every other single day. And I want to take you back to the time when COVID, came in. And when COVID came in, people lost their jobs. It disorganized so many people, so many things. And out of that, we got so many cases of, mental illnesses because I have lost my business. I've lost my family. I've lost everything. So, every other change and every other loss affects a human being in a certain way. And human beings are not people who like, to imagine things or the fear of the unknown. So anytime that we have something that is quite unknown, quite uncertain, it affects this particular kind of an individual negatively. So with hard economic times, it is changing our own perceptions of life, and it is making people to cope negatively in one way or the other. And that is why there was a time that there was an article that was written by one of the newspapers of a drinking nation. Why are people drinking yet we have hard economic times? This person has 100 bob. Instead of saving their 100 bob or buying the unga, this person only chooses to take alcohol. Why? Because any time that we are faced with stressful situations, our body reacts by producing what we call the stress hormones, the cortisol hormones. And these cortisol hormones makes our mood goes down. And human beings are made to feel good. And that is why every other Friday you'll see people, working out to feel good. Or probably on Saturdays they want to get into, swimming pools and do all manner of things to make sure that they are enjoying. Therefore, if at all my moods is quite low, my body will react by, I will always be triggered to, just boost my moods, boost this particular kind of, we call them the dopamines, feel good hormones, to just feel good and be a human being.
So it's the search for the dopamine.
The search for the dopamine.
That's treating them here. Do you think the socialization of the boy child is a problem? A boy child, socialized, and then there's a full expectation of society. Number one, you went to school, you graduated, you went to university, you graduated as a psychologist, you don't have a job. Or you graduated as a psychologist, people call you daktari, because all of you are doctors. And we are seeing how you're living. Maybe the job that you got is an entry-level job. You've been stuck in it for a while. The expectations that you also had when you were in school, by this time, by this age, I should be at this point, I should be. And you're not hitting those marks. And then back at home, you are expected to also start having these relations. So you have a relation, you have a girlfriend, you're getting into a relationship, and you are expected to be the provider. You are not meeting that end of the bargain. So are all these societal issues contributing to the mental health breakdown of the boy child?
Thank you so much. Anytime that I have a conversation about men, I always challenge them that we need to go back to the grounds on which we stand.
Okay.
And the grounds on which we stand is the grounds of culture. Every other human being, or probably us, the Africans, we are constructed by, the cultural norms. There is what the culture spoke to you as you're growing up as Eric. There is what the culture spoke to me as I was growing up. So I grew up knowing that a man should behave in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I have adopted that to be like a psychological contract, whereby before I do anything, I must go back to that psychological contract and ask myself, am I doing the right thing as a man? Is the culture viewing me as a man when I do this? And therefore, some of the things that we have adopted and picked as we grew up, I'll say there are some of the attributes which are good, but then again, there are things that are quite toxic. For example, telling a man that, for you to become a man, you must, be, you must own something, or probably you must be somewhere in terms of, the money. I have had a number of sayings here and there, and I'll say it in Swahili, and allow me kindly, that mwanaume ni wallet. Yeah? It is true you need money. But do you know how much this particular kind of saying is making men, to push themselves to the corner to a point whereby you can tell your wife, you can tell your girlfriend that you don't, things are bad.
That hauna hata wallet.
Hauna hata your wallet. You see, so we are being pushed to the corner by the things that we are picking we picked as we grew up. We are being pressurized or being pressured by the culture to a point whereby I don't have job and I'm 40 years old. I'm still struggling. But then again, the culture expect me at 40 to have a wife. The culture expect me at 40 to have a proper functioning family. I must be having kids. My kids must be in a certain school. You see, so I end up taking this pressure, absorbing it, and because I'm not to that particular level, what happens to me? The pressure now starts consuming me. Again, I pick it starts getting into me as stress, and this stress now produces the stress hormone that we're talking about. And that is why even today, you will notice that men cope quite negatively when it comes to pressure and when it comes to stress. I'll actually tell you that her gender, Hindu, females are more likely to be affected by depression as compared to men.
Okay.
Yes.
Because?
Number one, their genetical makeups. Number two, that is genetical makeups. They have a lot of a number of hormones here and there, and they have, what do we call them? there is that imbalance of the interferences of the hormones here and there, in terms of the monthly whatever cycle. We have the pregnancy. Then it comes to now in terms of what the culture has placed upon them. She's expected to deliver here at work. She's also expected to deliver
at home
and deliver a baby. You get. So there is a lot of pressure on her side as compared to the pressure that is on the side of the man.
However, are we not looking at a situation whereby there are other factors then that are involved here? And so that's why it makes it look as though it's so much more terrible when a man would then be depressed. Because, again, looking at social construct, that it is already naturally accepted that it would be seen that women have a buffer zone. Just because of that being in her feelings, she's more likely to share her experience with other people, be it another man, be it another woman, or even a man. Now, because of the solitude within which men have then been socially constructed, the likelihood of you sharing with another man is reduced. And that is why depression amongst men is so much more detrimental. Does that play out in any way?
That makes a lot of sense, and that is actually something that I was to touch on. When you look at, a woman will be affected. Let's say today, Indu, you have depression and I have depression. You're more likely to go outside there and share and, cry, talk about it, in an open manner. As compared to a man, before I get to share, I go back to the psychological contract that I was, placed by my culture. And I ask myself, if I share that I'm going through this, I'm going to be viewed as a weak man. And then what happens? I end up, bottling up these particular kind of issues and my emotions. So I don't share, I don't open up, and I end up now feeling so bad, or probably my mood is going down, and I now start coping negatively with this particular kind of depression. Actually, in a certain survey that was done, they say that 40% of men say that they will never share about whatever they are going through unless they witness that they are having thoughts to do with self-harm, or probably they are having issues to do with suicidal thoughts. Yeah.
You said there's a contract. There's an expectation of a boy child by the society and of the boy child to himself as he's growing up. I expect that, at this point, I should have hit this milestone. At this point, I should have hit this milestone. At this point, the society expects that I should have hit this milestone. I should be married. I should have property. I should have children. My children should be going to a good school. This and the other. If my children are misbehaving, there's a role of it. Are they looking at, so is this because of the father or is it because of the mother? If it's the father, there are areas that, okay, mtu hata nyumba yake, hawezi hata kuchunga nyumba yake. Is this unrealistic though? Is it an unrealistic expectation to have by the society and by yourself?
Yes. I believe it's quite unrealistic.
Why?
Expectation. Why? Because number one, before I was, I'm a human being before I was a Kikuyu man. Right? And it's the Kikuyu tradition that has taught me to be who I am, and it is the one that is giving me the perceived expectations. But on the other end, I'm a human being. A human being who is a man. So I operate as a man, as a human being. In terms of the milestone that I achieve, I'm achieving them as a human being, not as a man. Indu is achieving whatever she's achieving today as a human being, first of all, not as a female. Because the moment we now start putting in the issue of gender and what have you, then we'll actually now, go to the limitations that are there. Of course, genetically, there are some of the limitations here and there. But now when we bring in the issue of culture, then we limit ourselves in a certain way. Because, Eric, your grandfather doesn't know the struggles that you're going through today. Doesn't know that, okay, today there is what we call shared responsibilities. But the grandfather probably, I'm not saying that he told you that, probably, when you're growing up, he was telling you, or someone was being told, that to be a man, you don't expect a woman to provide. To be a man, you don't expect a woman to go to work. You don't school women. So this particular kind of expectations and whatever we are, perceiving and, pressuring ourselves today, sometimes it's unrealistic.
So how do you bring that reality? Because, okay, there are some things that were happening then based on the reality of the times then. But many of those things have not changed. What is it that was making the society function and function well? It's because of that culture. That culture basically was shaping how people behave and how they relate with one another. It was helping the people know, okay, so at this particular age, you become of age. Okay? In Kikuyu, they say Kogimara. What is Kogimara? You grow up. Yeah, from this point, you move from being a boy to a man. So more responsibilities are added onto you.
Yeah.
And those responsibilities come, the expectations that come also with responsibilities, and there's how you are expected to behave, but then also there's rewards that come with it. Because of that, now you can start having your own family. Because of that, now you can start owning property. Before that, when you're a little boy, you could not own property. Now, because you are this, you can start owning property. You can start doing this and the other. And it was balancing it out. It seems like we are removing everything from this whole room and even removing the good things, which included the balance. And the balance was because of this expectation, because you are now expected that you are a man, you are going to do this, you are expected to provide, counsel, support your unit of a family. So you may bring in the new dynamics that, okay, so we have shared responsibility. I can look after the children and my wife is at work. She can look after the children when I'm at work. She can bring in her income and we put it together. But there's an expectation that you are providing some sense of leadership. And that has not gone away from today's society. But we're trying to run away from it when it doesn't suit us.
I get your point of view, Mr. Eric. What we're trying to say is that culture has got two sides, right? There is the positive side, and I understand that, it is a very important tool in terms of shaping and, giving us the direction. And without it, probably we'll be lost in one way or the other. But what we are taking right now, and what the modern world is taking, and especially the boy child, and what we are experiencing at the moment, is taking things to the extremities. In terms of the responsibilities, yes, it's there. But now this particular kind of a man wants to, perceive power in terms of the extremes. And today we want to push ourselves in terms of, Eric bought an Audi yesterday. I want to buy an Audi tomorrow.
So comparison and pressure is essentially what brings about these feelings. It's not necessarily the expectation of society. So the expectation of society, what I hear what Eric is saying, that in some cases is not necessarily a bad thing, that you should be able to then lead. If you're in the position of a man, because we also know that you're made up of your spirit, your ego, etc., which nobody wants to take away from you, right? But we're also saying that there's certain expectations, and I think men at some point do feel good in that position, whereby you are in a position of leadership, whereby you are then the one who is able to guide in a certain way, shape, or form. But I think another construct of society then is this issue of pressure.
Peer pressure.
Where, like you say, you've bought a vehicle today and you're hanging around in the same circles, and the pressure, dictated or otherwise, then is on you to do the same thing. And if for whatever reason you are not able to, that starts to bring about these feelings. It is not the expectation of society, but it is the pressure that because somebody else has been able to do something, you feel as though you failed because you haven't. And that may not necessarily be true. You haven't failed. It's just that it has not happened for you yet. I
think it's a false creation of expectation.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Peer pressure is you feel because this person has bought a new car and is the way people are looking at them, then you think that the entire society has elevated them. So in order for you to also be elevated to the same level,
You need to do the same or
you
better.
also need to look for, that whole conversation, like you said, that mwanaume ni wallet. So if we see this guy has wallet because he bought a plot of land and he has started to build, and you have not bought a plot of land, are therefore not
Failure.
anywhere close to starting to build, then
So the emasculation of the man then begins from
that's the
there.
way.
Is it not?
Majorly perceived.
Right.
Perceived all.
It's a perceived expectation.
Right.
You see.
So
that is
where
taken
do-
to the extremities.
Yeah. So where do buffers come in? Because usually we'll say, "Oh, come on, man, you go talk about it and you'll be fine. Go hang out with your boys. You get over yourself. Have a conversation." But we already know that men are not socially built that way. To then go and have a conversation about it. Would you advocate for that? To actually be honest about opening up and saying, look, this is where I feel, man. You never know when somebody then can. The people who are around you, whether it could be a woman, it could be your friends, the people who are around you, what purposes do they serve in order to get you off, essentially, the ledge as a man?
Very, very important. And I think this is now where the picture of the perceived, unrealistic expectations and how what the culture is expecting from us comes in. Because if I am going through an issue and I know very well that I don't even have what it takes to solve this particular kind of a situation, I'm expected to go out and seek help. But then if I have the perceived, narrative that when I talk about what I'm going through and my weaknesses, I'll be perceived in a certain way
You'll be perceived
by
as
the
weak
society
and say
as
it.
weak.
Yeah.
So I'll end up not sharing. And how many men are doing that today? So yes, it is one of the most important thing as human beings do is to make sure that you're sharing. You're asking for help. And that is where resilience comes in. You're more resilient actually by, mobilizing the resources that are around you to make sure that you're moving on or you're bouncing back to, where you are. So sharing is one thing. But I always say that at times when we talk about crying is important. A lady will go out and she will cry. But then again, when a man cries, Eric, you lose so many things in front of your kids.
Street cred.
Right?
Cred. Unaliaje kama mtoto.
But does that not... I think that's very interesting that you say that. But doesn't that then... What it does is that it actually shows and it sounds crazy, but doesn't it actually then show your strength? Because what you're able to do is that show that you're comfortable with being vulnerable. It has nothing to do with who you are. It has everything to do with how you're able to handle things. That's why I feel terrible when I hear people tell little boys... Don't cry, don't show your emotions. Because what you're doing is that you're setting this young boy up to be a man in the future who is not able to be vulnerable with how he feels and be honest about his position.
You're feminizing the boy.
Are you? By saying be in touch with your emotions? No. I'm not saying cry all the time. But you say, don't show your emotions. Don't talk about it. If you're upset, don't say you're upset. Just be this stone in the corner somewhere. And that's a little boy who's 5-6 years old.
Yeah.
What happens when this boy grows older?
Okay. And this is where I want to come back to culture. All right, Arthur? So even in those traditional days, it was not okay to cry. But there was a system that helped you do it. There was a system that the whole thing of support, there was a support system that works. Whether you talk about, this sub-clan, people know each other, you belong to this sub-clan, and a member of this sub-clan usually meet every so often for whatever functions and things are happening. You can be seen you're struggling on one thing, the other members of your sub-clan come in, your siblings come in and they support without necessarily having to tell you, hey, we notice you don't have livestock, so we are going to give you life. No, you just find a way of livestock.
You off.
Yeah. Giving you stuff. But there's that support. We don't have that support anymore. And you will not go looking for that support. It would be easier for the woman to do it. It would not be easier for the man to do it. And I think we are trying to force this square peg through a round hole by saying, you know what, women talk about it and you see how they're able to handle things. Men, you also need to start talking about it. Square hole, round peg.
No, it sounds strange, but I actually agree with you on that. I don't think, and I really think this is an issue, and perhaps maybe we need to come to the place where, we can actually be open and have this conversation. It is not possible for two genders that are fundamentally different for you to use the coping mechanisms that a woman would use and ascribe that to men. I think it doesn't work just because the makeup is different. And I think every time we want to say be like the other, and I think that's what got us in this mess in the first place. Be like somebody else is what gives this man pressure when it doesn't work. So should we not be at the point whereby we are saying the coping mechanisms that were used before, I'm not saying reintroduce them, but I'm saying that there have to be ways. And perhaps that's where these studies, when people come into the office to sit down and have a conversation, that there have to be ways that are likened to the way you are as a man, that is going to see that you are able to cope with the things that come to you as a result of being a man. And that why are we not having those conversations? Why are women not supporting those conversations? Why are women not saying, well, no, you don't have to sit down with a box of tissues and chocolates and have a conversation with me? No, you don't. But are there ways in which we can actually say, look, man, we need to support these guys a lot more. We need to, understanding that they're fundamentally different, whereby it's been accepted that women deal with it in this way. But we're seeing more and more men who are suffering. But we are trying to say, put a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work because of how they are socially constructed.
Sure.
Should we not be looking at other avenues to deal with this and reduce the numbers of these things that we are seeing in society today?
Actually, I'd say it's true. And I was saying, if Eric is going to cry today in front of his kids, his ego will tell him that he has lost a number of things here and there. So it's good to pay attention, and it's good to, respect the fact that men are constructed differently with women, like Indu is talking about. And it's good to come up with avenues that respect or acknowledges that these are man and probably he needs this particular kind of avenues for him to be able to open up and share. And we are talking about men being able even to create their own support group, like Men's Cave, whereby you when you become vulnerable in such kind of forums, you are embraced as a man, and you're able, to move on in life, and you're able to, the other men are able to tell you that, okay, at this juncture, do this and this. Bring this on board, and you'll be able to bounce back. But then again, Eric, I'll say directly to you that today, the other killer of a man is a fellow man. I'll come to you, Eric. I'll be vulnerable to you. But the next minute, you'll tell me what?
Macho mama.
Macho mama. So what will make me to go to what will make me again to come you and respect and tell you my stories? I come to you that, okay, I'm having issues in my relationship because I'm treating my wife like this, and you'll tell me, well, man, why are you like that? Why are you in that relationship? Move on, man.
Get out.
Get out. You get Umekaliwa. So we need also to acknowledge that even us on our own levels as men, we are killing a fellow man.
Because we don't know. You see, it's because you don't know how to react. When somebody comes to you and they tell you, I'm having these issues with my wife, this and the other, you don't know how to react. Or if someone comes to you and tell you, I'm having challenges with, I'm thinking work, money, you have your own. So you don't know. So do I lend you money? What do I?
Yeah, that's a quick solution. You want a solution now so we can stop this emotional thing.
How do I sort you out? Shida nini pesa?
Wacha tuone kama
sasa siwezi kupatia zozote. I don't give you all the money that we've created. Sasa you'll be coming to me also. So we don't know how to do it. Don't know how to handle it. Don't know how to move on from there. So you're trying to, as much as possible, as quickly as possible, appear to be giving this guy a solution. So you move. And that's how we are wired. And that's why women sometimes complain that she has come from work, she's sitting there, she's ranting and wailing, ranting and raving. I just about to use the word itching with a B at the beginning about her day at work. And you're already starting to give her solutions. Maybe you should She says, I was not looking for a solution.
Offload.
I was just offloading. Like, why are you telling
Why?
me, man? So why are you telling me if you don't want me to give you a solution? We are wired to be like that. You
Yeah.
come to me with an issue, I'm already thinking, okay, so what's the problem here? How do I break down this problem?
How do I fix it?
How do I start fixing this problem? From what angle do I approach it? How do you address that then?
By just acknowledging that we are human beings and we are emotional beings. Now, when you acknowledge that you have emotions, when you acknowledge that, okay, at times you'll feel like you're on your lowest and you're sad. So acknowledging those particular kind of emotions is very, very key. And number two, paying attention or giving someone time is not all about money. We have seen and we have received men who have billions, but then again they are still depressed. Why? Because it's not all about money. It goes beyond money. So let's be able to see beyond the finances. Let's be able to see beyond the fact that I need to give a solution in terms of money and what have you, and see the emotions themselves for what they are. You come to me, you're crying because you lost your marriage the other day. I see the fact that you are, you love that lady. You've lost your family. Let me see a human being before I see,
Say, okay, tukutafutie dem.
And this kind of conversation, unfortunately, they happen in the clubs. Yeah. So when you meet Eric in the club, he will definitely call the waiter and ask, the unfortunate part of it. Yeah.
It's laugh, but it's actually true. That's what happened.
And what I can tell men this early morning is that we need to acknowledge and we need to take a step at a time. I've lost a job today. Let me take the process of looking for that job. I don't have cash right now. My finances are sick. Let me take time to build those finances, a step at a time. And also opening up to your lady and telling them, this is my financial status.
Women.
Because this pressure is not only coming from, perceived. It can also come from the other gender.
Yep.
I think most times it does, if we want to be honest.
Yes.
I think a lot of the pressure, in as much as men are seeing their fellow men
Yes.
succeeding here and there, I think there's a lot of pressure. And
From the
I
woman.
think there's women who give men a lot of pressure. And
Exactly.
I know the feminists will come for me with cannons and go and Kashalnikovs today. But it's true that I think there is also a certain amount of reprieve that we can give these fellas. As we go through this thing. And, I think there's sometimes where we need to take a moment and say, okay, you can see where this guy is. If you also know his status. He can pretend, but at the end of the day, you're going to know when you give him this pressure, what do you expect him to do? I think there's a lot of support that can come
needs to
from
come from there.
females as well.
Exactly.
I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and he talked about there's what we call the wokeness of the modern day woman, and whether that is having an effect on the man, and whether that's why the men are now going into these other groupings, and maybe it's coming out like they're also being toxic, masculine. What is this wokeness of the woman? It has raised expectations as a woman. I mean, if a man who loves you will listen to you, will take you for who you are, will support your goals, will do this and the other, will do this and the other, and the other side of a man who loves you needs your support is not mentioned. A man who loves you needs to be acknowledged for the love that he's giving you. A man who loves you needs to be seen for the human that is there. No, we are equating it to he will do all these things for you. So the bar is right up there.
Yeah, if you love me, you'll spend on me.
Yeah. If you love me, you will do this and the
It's
other.
true. Is it not?
And then I will just be checking the boxes. Did he spend on me? Is he buying me gifts? Is he doing this and the other? You get into a marriage or relationship, the man who loves you will not shame you in front of others. So when you're in this chama and all the children are going to this group of schools and our children are not, we're in this chama and these guys are all moving into these big estates and the guy has gotten a new job and they're moving out of the country and you're not. That pressure, boss.
It's too much. you should become the chairman of the, boy child.
He is.
Arthur, you need to come again and again and again. And we keep having these conversations. And the next time we come, we open up the phone lines and let's hear. Let's hear from both men, women, and marketing for Hustler is saying men, women, and the other genders as well.
I like to give men our numbers, like probably if they can be able to call,
At
because we
Chiromo
have
Hospital
a toll-free number
Okay.
that they can call anytime, and it's very, very simple. It's actually 0800 220 000.
0800 220 000. That's
Yes,
the number. Men, just call, speak to somebody on the other end. That's a Chiromo Hospital group.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.